Hey, nice bit of weather we're having at the moment. I went out for a bit of a blast on the classic 350 on Sunday. A bit of me time, a bit of thinking time. Things didn't go well with my DIY in the living room. My house seems to be fighting me every step of the way at the moment. It doesn't want to be updated, and it's letting me know in no uncertain terms that it doesn't want to be updated. It's a bit like me in a way, old, set in its ways and resistant to change. Now, while I was riding, I got thinking about one or two news reports that I'd seen during the week. Just Stop Oil, who've been strangely quiet during the winter months. It would appear that climate change is only important in summer. Or is it just too cold for the little dears during the winter months, to go out and make a nuisance of themselves? Anyway, they've reared their ugly heads once again, causing chaos, mainly on the streets of London, and causing chaos at sporting events. And there was this strange, conflicting reaction on the behalf of the police, whereby protesters affecting a football match are dealt with swiftly and firmly by the authorities. Maybe because there was TV cameras present, I don't know. Yet those blocking the highways and preventing law-abiding citizens from getting to work, getting to appointments, or even just going to visit friends and family is allowed to continue unabated. In fact, it's not just allowed to continue. From my viewpoint, they're actually being assisted by the police. Now, granted, my sort of knowledge of the law is a little bit rusty now. It's some time since I was a serving police officer. But I simply can't see the justification for police action. Now, as far as I'm aware, it is still an offence to obstruct the highway, and it's the local authority's responsibility to ensure that any obstructions are removed. Walking very slowly, willfully slowing or stopping the traffic is still obstruction. The fact that they're moving is neither here nor there. For a start, these people are pedestrians. They should be on the pavement, not on the road. They are only supposed to use the road for demonstration if this has been authorised in advance by the local authority. But these protesters are using guerrilla tactics. They're simply turning up without informing anyone, and the police do nothing. And this seeded a question in my head. Are we, as motorists, as law-abiding citizens that pay our road tax, pay our fuel duty, now second-rate citizens because the fashion is now the worship of the planet and its climate? So if that's your agenda, anything goes. A working man or woman who, needs to earn a crust to keep a roof over their heads, to keep the bills paid, and to keep food on the table for the families, no longer matter. Their ability to do that doesn't matter anymore. There were a couple of incidents last year where, shall we say, minority groups were present at rallies which had been previously authorised by the local council, yet they were considered by the organisers of those rallies to be the wrong sort of minority group, and this caused some friction. This small group in themselves were quite peaceful, they weren't causing any problems, but their mere presence there were inflaming this other group to the point where the police told them that they would have to leave the area or face arrest for conduct likely to lead to a breach of the peace. A totally ridiculous situation as far as I'm concerned, but that's exactly what we've got here. We have protesters blocking the road, preventing law-abiding motorists from going about the business, causing people to get angry, causing tempers to fray, and people to get aggressive. Yet they're allowed to just continue to do it. And we saw this situation last week where a young man, I think he was a construction worker or a council worker, something like that, desperate to get to work, started pushing some of the protesters out of the way. Under those circumstances, I think that is a very predictable reaction for any person that has been pushed too far. And I personally think that young man's reaction was not just a response to the protesters, but the inactivity of the police. Now, in the footage that's been shown on sort of various news platforms, it was clear that the police simply weren't paying attention to what was going on. In fact, they had the backs turned to the members of the public and the protesters. They were just chatting among themselves. And it was only when one of these protesters rather dramatically fell at the feet of one of the officers that they turned round to see what was going on. Now, their reaction, in my mind, was abhorrent. Granted, the young man very probably shouldn't have done what he did, but he was driven to it by the behaviour of these protesters and the reluctance or refusal of the police to do anything about it. He needed to get to work and he lost his temper. And he committed what could be described as a breach of the peace. I think they actually charged him with common assault. But it's the responsibility of the police, when they're in that situation, to foresee something like this happening. Those protesters were behaving in a way that was likely to cause a breach of the peace. It should have been nipped in the bud. They should have been moved off the road. If they returned to the road, okay, give them a few chances, but then you arrest them for conduct likely to cause a breach of the peace, or for willful obstruction, or a choice of any other various offences that are at their disposal. Instead, they decided to condone their action and actually act as police protection for these people, then acting very aggressively towards this young man who simply needed to get to work. Those protesters had flouted the regulations by not getting prior approval to use the road. They were committing offences, yet the police were assisting them, and it was only when what was probably normally a very reasonable young man lost it that they took any action, but they took the action against the wrong person, because he's a motorist. Now, I was born and bred in England, and in my life experience, I never ever thought I would reach an age where this could happen in the UK. I'm totally dumbfounded by the behaviour of the authorities. We know that the government want rid of motor vehicles. They want us using public transport or walking everywhere. And I'm still not entirely clear what the motivation is for this. But the road traffic regulations are still in place. They're still issuing driving licences. They're still accepting fuel tax, VAT. They're still accepting road tax from us. Their acceptance of these fees and applications is one side of a legally binding contract. So they should ensure that we can still travel freely on the roads where possible without having to put up with willful obstruction aided by the police. We have situations where occasionally these protesters are arrested, yet they're given very light sentences by judges who apparently sympathise with their cause. A sympathy which is in direct conflict with the legal justice system. A judge is supposed to be impartial. Why is this being tolerated? Now, I know we tend to think of this as being a London-centric problem, but it's not really. Other countries are experiencing very similar outrages. And of course there were news reports about the German police acting very decisively against the sort of German version of Just Stop Oil, quickly dragging them off the road and arresting them. And the German authorities are treating these groups as they should be treated, the subversive organisations. They're raiding the homes for evidence of future insurgencies. They're freezing the bank accounts to take away their ability to fund these operations. And believe it or not, the United Nations yesterday edge them to stop it and leave these people alone. The United Nations, of course, being one of the sort of major centres of this global climate religion. And if this is allowed to continue, it's going to catch all of us, no matter where we live, what we do, or what mode of motorised transport we choose for our daily commute. In the near future, we're all going to find our freedom to travel severely curtailed unless we start to do something about it now. These people would not be allowed to continue doing what they do if the cause was anything other than climate change. Now, I commented earlier in this video about being sort of old, set in my ways and resistant to change. Actually, I don't think that is the issue here. That's not what it's about. The Ukraine is not defending itself because it's setting its ways and it's resistant to change. It's defending its liberty and freedom, just as many countries here in Europe had to do the same thing back in the 1940s. That phrase should not be thrown at people as a rebuke or a criticism. That's just a way that these people use to control the way that you think. If you're watching this video, yeah, I'm presuming that there will be some religious climate zealots waiting to jump into the comments section. But the majority of you will be watching this video because you are motorists, you are motorcyclists, or you drive a car. You people are not the minority, you are the majority, the silent majority. These people, like Just Stop Oil, are to some extent very much in control because they are loud, they're in your face. And the rest of us that just want to go about our daily routines, we do it quietly. But personally, I think it's time we stopped doing it quietly. It's time we made our voices heard, because if we don't, it's going to be too late. You and I pay for the privilege of freedom to use our motorcycles, and we pay handsomely for it. This behaviour is going to spread in the coming years. It's not just going to be restricted to London. It doesn't matter where these groups are operating, whether they're in Spain, France, Germany or here in the UK. They're all bankrolled by the same entities. And the longer it's allowed to continue, the more powerful they're going to become. And irrespective of what they say their goals are, the more damage to your freedom they're going to cause. Once again, thank you for taking the time to listen to this little rant. It's something I did actually need to get off my chest because it's really winding me up. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Don't forget to hit the notification bell and ensure that your notifications are enabled. I'm still getting a lot of reports from people that they're not receiving notifications when I upload a new video. I am of course going to be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.